What are we talking about when we're talking about an endurance mindset and keeping an endurance mindset?
When we're talking about endurance mindset, is for me, I think it's really about anticipating that there's going to be challenges, adversity along the way, and being prepared for it, right? Being able to endure that process so you can propel and move on the other side of what you're trying to achieve.
Why is it important that we think about an endurance mindset and how we might tackle those challenges before we even face them?
If you are already accounting for it, then you can perhaps train for it mentally or actually physically in the way that you think about, the spaces that you might need to be in and how you approach the different environment that you're in. But then on a mental standpoint, it's really preparing, having a clear expectation or a realistic expectation that there are times things might be difficult and there are times where things might be much easier. But to be able to anticipate it, it prepares you for the journey when you are encountering those challenges.
Welcome to the Learning Success Podcast, brought to you by Deo Mwano Consultancy. I'm David, and this is Deo. Deo, how are you doing today?
Hey, David, great to see you, man.
Yeah. I'm excited about our conversation today. We're here to share our insights in order to help you as teachers. We're here to support you and help drive student success by providing practical and relevant information and insights in order to help you build a healthy learning environment. And today we're talking about an endurance mindset. We're going to be talking about some definitions and some pitfalls and some tips in terms of endurance mindset. And at the end, we're also going to talk about some specific challenges that teachers and students face when it comes to continuing to keep an endurance mindset. So Deo, first, maybe we can just set the stage with your definition or what comes to mind. What are we talking about when we're talking about an endurance mindset and keeping an endurance mindset? Whether that be parents, teachers, administrators, students, just in general, what are we talking about?
Yeah, thank you, David. I'm excited for this podcast today. When we're talking about endurance mindset, for me, I think it's really about anticipating that there's going to be challenges, adversity along the way, and being prepared for it, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to endure that process so you can propel and move on the other side of what you're trying to achieve. From an educator side, it's really critical to think about what does it mean and how you're showing up as an educator, navigating different moving parts of your student or even your own perspective in terms of expectation that's on you. From the student side, it's a journey, right? Learning comes with a lot of different moving parts. It's up and down. It challenges us. There's certain subject that we're good at. There's certain subject that we're not good at. There's certain elements of our deliverables that we might be great on. There's certain element of our deliverable that we might struggle. Mm-hmm. So having an endurance mindset is being open to go through the process of what it requires for us to overcome the challenges that's presented that might be tough or difficult, but being able to believe that you can make it to the other side. And part of it is being able to acquire knowledge and demonstrating the knowledge accordingly. But it's the process that matters. And I think it's really more of a mindset. Some people said having grit, having the right purposeful perspective of how do you take that journey as a learner or as an educator to be on the other side of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think journey is exactly what I think of as well. When I think of that endurance mindset, I think of that journey, not only starting out, but towards the middle, towards the end. What does that look like? All those different things along the way. And the other thing that comes to my mind is resiliency of popping back up and being able to continue on that journey, not if something challenging happens, but when it happens. And how it happens, and what supports do we have around ourselves to support us and to continue to help us to continue on that path, to continue on that journey, whether that be teachers, whether that be students. I think we experience all those challenges differently, and we experience different challenges. But I think the biggest thing is that we all experience those challenges, and that endurance mindset is how we actually get through those and continue on. Well, the next thing I wanted to talk about was why is that important? Why is it important that we think about this endurance mindset, right? Things happen and we just get through them. You know, is somebody could say I'll deal with that when I get there. Why is it important that we think about an endurance mindset and how we might tackle those challenges before we even face them?
Yeah, I think it comes back down to mindset, right? Yeah. Our intention behind what we're expecting in terms of what the journey is going to look like. And if you are already accounting for it, then you can perhaps train for it mentally or actually physically in the way that you think about, you know, the spaces that you might need to be in and how you approach the different environment that you're in. But then on a mental standpoint, it's really preparing, having a clear expectation or a realistic expectation that there are times things might be difficult and there are times where things might be much easier. Yeah. But to be able to anticipate it, it prepares you for the journey when you are encountering those challenges. And I think with learning, sometimes there's a lot of different moving parts that sometimes we create our own defense mechanism of how we want to deal with our learning. So depending on the expectation that you've set, you know, I mean, even from students' perspective, sometimes people say, oh, I'm not really good at this, or I'm not really good at that. They might not even give themselves a chance because maybe prior experiences that they've had within that subject, or sometimes even a teacher that they've had previously where they're like, oh, I'm not good in this subject. And when you start unpacking, they might say, oh, it was when I had that teacher, it was really challenging. Or when I had this subject, it was really challenging. But when you come from a endurance mindset, then it's preparing you to you know, engage in the process that it might be hard, right? Yeah. So for instance, like if you are somebody that works out or if you do some sort of a sport activity where, you know, it's not just the downhill, right? If you love to bike, right? Everyone would say, yes, sign me up for downhill. But what happens when the uphill comes and you didn't anticipate it, right? There's no expectation that, oh yeah, maybe I'm gonna have to ride my bike up the hill. Yeah. Then you didn't train for it, you're not prepared for it, you get down the hill, you're like, whoo, I did it. And then you're like, oh snap, you're looking at the hill, you're like, oh, how am I gonna get on the other side, right? Yeah. So being able to prepare for it, it sets a realistic expectation for yourself. Because a lot of that, it's really the mental state of where you are. Then it is actually the deliverable. The deliverable is just part of the outcome, right? What you're showing. But what's happening internally, it's your perspective and your point of view of that journey as a learner from an educator standpoint or from a student standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I was thinking of, I teach calculus to incoming freshmen at the college age, and there's a lot of anticipation. They're getting to class. This is, you know, the first college class perhaps they're taking, and students are really excited. And you know, a lot of times I try to right off the bat develop that endurance mindset that this is going to get hard. That may be different points along the way for different people. Some of you might be scared right now. Some of you might be really excited, you know, and that might set in a couple of weeks, or it might even be, you know, halfway through the course. But just like you were saying, of trying to kind of anticipate that, like, there are going to be ups and there are going to be downs. You're going to have days that you are really excited and feel like you're on top of the world, and then other days where you feel like you're just, you know, totally overwhelmed. And kind of creating that, you know, and normalizing that, I think is really, really important to help that sort of, and build that trust too. Of, you know, like you were saying, of like, that doesn't mean that you're bad at this. Whenever you face these challenges, you're not bad at it. You're just facing a challenge. You know, no one runs a marathon and doesn't get tired somewhere in there. They're going to get to that point where they are fatigued, and that doesn't mean that they're bad at that. It just means that they're fatigued, and you know, building in those ideas that this is going to get tough, and when it does, I'm there to help. I think is super important, for sure. Well, let's talk about more specifically about kind of transition, and talk about more as educators, right? So students, you can leave the room, and let's just talk about, you know, us as educators, because education is tough. It takes all of you, to be that on all of the time and to make sure that you are getting the best out of your students and putting, being positive. Sometimes when the students leave the room and you have a chance to exhale, it feels daunting. It feels overwhelming. So, in terms of educators, perhaps you can speak from personal experience, or, what are some things that we can do as educators to develop our own sense of an endurance mindset, right? Because before we do it for students,
right,
we have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. So what are some of those things that we can do? I'm sure that we could talk about this for its own podcast, just this little piece, but
right,
maybe we can kind of, at a higher level, we can always delve deeper into some of these these topics. But what are some things, that you would suggest to build that endurance mindset as an educator?
Yeah, no, I think the important part of that is really, from an educator standpoint, having an understanding of what some of the moving parts that contributes to the experience that you have as a teacher. And I think importantly is also the experience that your students will have, right? So that's the good, the bad, the challenges, the unforeseen experiences, right? So if you are already anticipating that as part of the journey, then it will help you better prepare how you go about engaging with your students. So for instance, I had a chance a couple of years ago to teach the first accredited dance and theory class at a college. And I went into when I was trying to figure out what type of students that I'm going to get, we did a little pre-questionnaire asking students, have you danced before? Have you never danced before? What interests you to take this class? It was a 3-credit class. That was first time ever offered. So some of the students, they liked the idea of having a dance class. It's not like, if it feels an art class credit and also physical education credit. So some of the students, that's really what lured them in. So as I was looking at the pre-answers, I was like, okay, so I have some students that have never danced before, have never taken a dance class.
Yeah.
I have students that have taken a dance class. So then I started to think about, what are certain perspective and point of views or mindset that I have that I need to create a space to be able to address it, so then those mindsets don't hold the students back from just engaging and learning and participating fully. So some of it was, nervousness, right? You're in a room with a bunch of other students that you have to dance. Some students might come with their own maybe self-consciousness around, like, am I going to look silly? Do I know where my right foot or my left foot is, right? Can I fully be expressive? So I already captured some of that, and that actually set the tone in terms of how I was going to show up in order to engage with the students. So then I normalize those challenges, knowing that, hey, some of your students in your classroom are going to be coming with these types of point of view and mindset. And if I want to create a space where these students can fully take advantage of this class and learn and develop and have fun, I need to be able to address some of these perspective and point of view ahead of time in a way that it normalizes it.
Yeah.
So when I was looking through the documentations from the pre-feedback of the class, I had 16 students. And so then I was like, all right, I need to make sure that I set that tone. Or I could have been scared of it, right? It could have held me back. It could have been like, dude, are you going to be successful teaching this class? This is the first class. They've never had it before. You have students that have never danced. You have students that might be scared of this. It might even go to make me second guess my what I'm going to teach, right? It might make me second guess like the rigor, right? In terms of like what the expectations are, right? So in that class, you had 2 papers. Halfway through the class, it was a 5-page paper, and then at the end of class, 5-page paper, and then you had discussion posts that you needed to do every week, right? So as I was reflecting on where the students might come, maybe I would have said, maybe let's just do a 1-pager, right? Let's do a 1-pager midway, and let's do a 1-pager at the end of class, end of the semester. And then I could have also said, you know what? Maybe we just do 1 post, right? And make it passive, right? My empathy towards the student might have watered down the expectation. So if I didn't have an endurance mindset, I say, all right, let's water this down to make sure that the students are pleased or they're not challenged so much that they don't come back, right?
Yeah.
But no, I said, no, I'm going to walk into that space in terms of all these different moving parts that might negatively impact the students in my class and normalize, almost address and demonstrate how they can maximize it. So in my first day of class, I told the students, hey, I'm Mr. Deo. I've been teaching dance for a very long time. I'm excited to be here with you all. I just want to let you know that sometimes the format of this class might be very different than the format of other classes you've taken. My expectation is we will all participate. So for instance, first day of class, we're in a circle. I want you all to give me your perspective of what are you excited about for this class and what are you nervous about? And I just want to let you know, you can say anything that might be negative that's impacting you. As long as it's not targeting me, you're completely fine. So if you're like, oh, I'm nervous because of this, I want to hear it because I want to be able to address, as we have this experience in this class for the next couple of weeks for this semester, I want to be able to create a space where we can tackle some of those challenges.
Yeah.
So then I went on and said, here's my thing. I'm excited. This is the first inaugural dance class here. And I have actually 16 students. I'm excited. What am I nervous about? I'm nervous that maybe sometimes I might teach a little too fast and the movement might be a little over your head and you might feel frustrated. So I'm nervous in that. So in terms of normalizing that nervousness, I'm opening up the floor where at any time you can reach out to me as you're engaging with the class and you're engaging with the movement so we can make sure that we find a common ground. Because part of this class is not about perfection, because I know you all are coming in with different dance level. Yeah. Some of you have danced before, some of you, right? So just naming some of that stuff, it helped them to understand that I understood where they were all coming from. Yeah. And then the point wasn't perfection in the dance movement, then actually exploring what dance is and what the movement is, what the music is. So being able to address some of those challenges instead of running away from it allowed me to come in with an endurance mindset. And just to kind of close that story, halfway through the semester, the dean of liberal arts came and he said, hey, I want to come and visit your class because this is the first class that we've ever offered. Yeah. And so he walks in. The first 10 minutes we stretched, and then we danced for the first hour and a half. It was a 3-hour class, 1 day a week. We danced for the first hour and a half, and then we go back to the videos that I posted in the discussion board. So I would put dance videos and different things, and then we would have a discussion where we'll just go in a circle. Every student will talk about what they experienced within the dance move or the video that we watched. And he watched the class happen from the side. He was like, at the end of the class, he came up, he said, I've never seen this before. Like, all your students participated and they all seem enthusiastic about the experience. And I told him, I'm like, we just normalized what the expectation of the class was. Yeah. And so everybody dances, everybody participates. And I told the students, you can tell me how you feel about the movement. And you can tell me where you make connection and where you don't make connection. And I'm not going to get offended by it. I don't have any emotional attachment to the choreography that I'm teaching you all, other than the process of what we're discovering. And so it was really like, I remember when I was reflecting on that, I was like, oh yeah, we've normalized what the experience is for the last couple of weeks. Here you had someone come in and witness this, and it was a different experience than what most of the students or the experiences the students had at that college at the time, you know? So I think it's really important to think about that endurance mindset, because what it is you're able to identify what could be potential roadblocks, what could be potential challenges. And when you have the opportunity, you can even engage with the students directly to get their feedback on what it is. Yeah. And then you have a plan that addresses it doesn't address the students. Okay. I want to be clear on this, because a lot of times when someone say addressing the challenge, sometimes people think it's addressing the students. Yeah. You're addressing the challenge, not the students. Right. And if the students see that you understand the challenge and you're giving them the tools to overcome some of those challenges, then it creates an opportunity for them to also walk in and experience it. Right. Because we took perfection out of the way. Yeah. It just normalized it for them to know that, okay, my grade is not based on how well I do Mr. Deo's choreography versus my ability to engage and reflect on how I'm feeling throughout the course of the class. Yeah. Right. So I just wanted to give that example because I know that, we're trying to provide tangible tools that teachers can use.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, it's so great to hear, I think as educators, we want the best. We want the best for our students. We want the best experience. And so sometimes I think what happens is that, like you were saying, that we tend towards like a perfection model of like, I need to have everything in its place and every little thing. And then what happens is then we have that small little thing that gets in the way, and all of a sudden it just kind of breaks down. We have no tools to be able to, because we put all of our eggs in the basket of perfection, that we had figured everything out. But like you're saying with your example of exploring and normalizing, the challenges that the students may face, you're opening up that communication. You're opening up that world of an endurance mindset that says, okay, let's put all of these things in place, whether that be, the support of each other or the communication, the open channels of feedback, so that when you face those challenges, that we're able to address them as a group, as a class. And it clearly changed the culture of what was happening, and I think that's a great way to you can be that sort of vulnerability is really, really powerful to say to students, even like, I'm not sure where to go next, or I'm having trouble with this. Sharing that vulnerability in an appropriate way with students, I think can really help us as educators to show that that we're human as well, and we're learning through this process, but also just kind of help us share as a group, like we all own this, these challenges here. Well, thank you so much for that experience and that insight. I think what I wanted to maybe talk about next is maybe another group of educators or students or administrators. What about someone who has maybe kind of crossed over that line of like, I don't feel like I have an endurance mindset anymore. I don't feel like I'm in a place, your example of, some people listening were like, oh, that is amazing. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that example. That feels like me. But maybe there's other educators who have reached that point in the year where it's like, I don't feel like I have control over that endurance mindset anymore. I don't feel like I have it. I feel like I'm lost on that journey. I feel like I've kind of sat down. I don't feel like I can get back up. What is it? What could we say to those people? What could we offer those teachers, those administrators who feel like they're at that point? They feel like they want to turn around. They don't feel like they can go on. What does it look like for them?
No, I think that, first of all, if they are self-aware to acknowledge that, that's incredible, because most of the time folks are actually not aware that, that's not how they're approaching their experience in terms of, the endurance aspect of it. The pursuit of that is really not there. So I think if they are aware of it, that's great. I mean, I think that's the starting point. But I would say in a lot of the work that I've done consulting teachers in schools, most of the time educators are not fully reflective on that to acknowledge that either their endurance is depleted, or that's not how they've actually have approached their experience as teachers with that mindset. So I think the important part for them is really to identify where the intersection lies between how they prioritize their teaching requirements in terms of like where they're putting all their the things that are most important to them, right? Yeah. In terms of what they want to accomplish as a teacher. So if they think about like what are my priority, what's driving them, and then what's the outcome that I'm looking for, and then how does it manifest? And I think part of it is really having this very reciprocal approach in your teaching, where you're constantly getting feedback from your from your students. Yeah. You're constantly getting feedback from your students in order to make sure that what your intentions are is actually showing up in a way that it needs to be.
Yeah.
And if you acknowledge that there's certain roadblocks that's occurring that's preventing you from achieving your goals, then it's an important thing to identify, what am I doing? How am I showing up? Because during those self-reflection, you will be able to identify that, oh yeah, like maybe I lean towards more the simple stuff or the neutral stuff or the stuff that's less frictional.
Yeah.
And why is that? What's causing that?
Yeah.
Right? And being receptive, I think, is a really important part in the professional development side of things on a personal level.
Yeah.
When you're reflective, then you're able to be vulnerable with yourself in order to say, oh, actually, you know what? I realized that I'm just very risk averse.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
playing it safe, right?
Right.
Maybe I'll teach sometimes you have teachers that are, they might gravitate more towards certain levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd rather teach at this level maybe because they don't want the challenges that might occur, right?
Yeah.
So I would say definitely part of having an endurance mindset, if you're empty, is to be able to really think about your learners.
Yeah.
Because in a teaching relationship, it'd be one thing if you're teaching yourself, right? But it's a transactional relationship where you have a bunch of other people that are following your guidance and your guidelines. So in part of your approach, you always have to attest to what their experiences are. And if you're open, you're going to learn a whole lot from that. And I also think that it's not just the student themselves. I also think that, especially with K to 12, it's the parents' perspective too.
Yeah.
When you think of elementary or even middle school, because the parents might have a little bit more insight around their children's how they act and how they show up.
Yeah.
And if you're not open to understand some of those moving parts, you might not be reflective to notice that, maybe you're operating from an emptiness when it comes to your endurance.
Right.
And part of it is that you got to figure out, what does it look like on a consistent basis for you to operate from that mindset?
Right.
Because in order to be an effective teacher, you have to have an element of endurance in there, right? You have to have an element of grit.
Yeah.
You have to have an element of resiliency. Yes, we're not perfect. There's different things that happens in our life that we might be stretched. It might impact how we're showing up as teachers in our regular responsibility. But I think part of it is you need to have it. And the beneficiary of that, it's not just you, it's actually your students, right?
Yeah.
The people that you're trusted to guide and develop, right? So I would say definitely being able to look at that and then identifying, where the gaps are for you personally.
Yeah.
And being honest with yourself, right? It might be that, maybe you're sick and tired of your classes not performing in the level of maybe your other colleagues. So maybe that's what the thing that's driving you.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a bunch of students that just gives you, a few students that give you a lot of attitude that drains you, and by the time you get to them or you get to other things, you're already tired, right? You got to be able to figure out what are the things that are driving them and then have a plan to address it.
Yeah.
Maybe find another colleague that understands your experience that you can reflect with.
Yeah.
And then have a plan that's going to help you to develop it, And you also you always have to believe in the student.
Yeah.
You got to believe in their potential. And I think that's the biggest driver for changing a different mindset in how you approach your learning. Again, I mentioned that earlier. You have to be able to separate the student and their behavior.
Right.
Because if you believe in their potential, that's always going to be the fuel that allows you to show up energized positively and find different pathways to provide alternatives for that students to still believe in you. There's been times where I've spent doing some coaching and after school program where, I hear stories that students might talk about their teachers. It's always surprising to me when I hear that, that teacher is so tough or hard, but that teacher always have my back.
Yeah.
Right. Then I'm like, oh man, that's so awesome to know that even through the challenges the student might experience in the classroom, they still know that the teacher is there for them, Yeah. So I think from an endurance standpoint, it's critical. It's really critical to have that. And I think it makes a big difference in how you show up as an educator every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that insight. I'm pumped up. I'm ready to get back to it and empower students. And if you found something that was helpful, please share this podcast with a colleague. You can comment on our YouTube page. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much, Deo, for being with us, and thank you.